Hi there, this is Phil with Phil Effects, and we've got another tutorial today. Today's tutorial is going to be on how you move a pivot within Toon Boom Harmony. I'm going to create a whole new set of tutorials here using Toon Boom Harmony Advanced, which is the tool that we use in our 2D class at Phoenix College. And like I said, today I want to talk about moving pivots. When you animate, normally you want to take and you'll select your object, like I've selected this ball that I've created here on this layer, and we would move our playhead to where we want, make sure that our layer is selected, and then we would come over and hit the transform tool. And if I just wanted to move the object in X and Y, that's fairly straightforward, and I can position it anywhere on the screen and create a key for where I wanted that to be. If, however, I wanted to scale or rotate the object, then the location of the pivot point becomes very important. And that pivot point location is right here in the center of the screen. That is the pivot point. So you might ask yourself, well, if that's important and that's where I want the center of rotation, why don't I just take and grab it? Because Harmony will let me move it, because I can see I have a move tool, so I can just take this and go up here and I can put this in the center. And let me get that close to where the center appears to be. And then if I want to do a rotation, I don't see what the problem is here, Phil. I can move that pivot point and put it in the center. I did my animation and life is good. Well, there's a problem with that, because just moving the pivot point like that, you still see that there's a shadow here. The reason is there a shadow is here is because you haven't permanently moved it. You moved the pivot point for this one animation, this one keyframe that you set, but as soon as I deselect the bouncing ball, come back and select it, you can see the pivot point is now still down here where it was shadowed. And in fact, if I want to go in and do a rotation, it's going to rotate, and it's rotating where that pivot point is down here. So basically this is a real problem. You haven't permanently moved the pivot point, and it's not accomplishing what you want. So you might ask yourself, okay, so how do I do this? How do I put the pivot point so it stays in the center of the ball, so every time I want to rotate it, I know the pivot point is in the right place? The way you do that is we go in and you start out, we have no keys selected, and you've just imported your object, you've drawn it, and you want to animate it, but first you want to permanently lock that pivot point. So how you do it is you select the transform tool, but now you need to make sure that the advanced animation toolbars are visible. So if we go up to Windows, Toolbars, I have advanced animation checked. Let me uncheck that so you can see what that is. That's that toolbar that was right there. So let's go back in, select advanced animation, and so we have the advanced animation toolbars. And this icon with the cross, that's for doing transforms. This icon with the arrow and the dot, the circular arrow and the dot, is for doing rotations. You can move the pivot point using either one of these two tools. Personally, my preference is to use the rotation tool, and the reason for that you'll see. So if I click this, maybe it's faint in the screen capture, but there's a light purple line that goes all the way around here. And it gives me kind of an outline, so it makes it easier for me to take and drag this and put it over my object. And in this case, I have my sphere here. So let me increase the size of this so I can see it better by hitting the 2 key and hold the space bar, hit 2 a couple more times, and now we can see that. Now my circle is being a little bit washed out because of my color card. So let's go in and turn the color card off. And I can go in and move that, and now that looks pretty good. Okay, and we have that centered, and if I wanted to, I could actually make it so the start rotation for the device is with my lines up and down. I'll turn my color card back on, center my screen by hitting Shift M. And now I hit the select key. Now I'm ready to animate this, and I have the pivot point permanently moved. I know that because I can go in and click this, and now we see that pivot point is permanently there. So I could go in and let's put some animations on this. So I could take the ball and I can rotate it this way. And let's go out to frame 10, and I can rotate it back like that. And let's go to frame 20 and rotate it like this. Let me purposely deselect it, come back and select it again, and go out to frame 30, and I can rotate it like that. So now we see that my ball is rotating, and I have permanently moved that pivot point, and so the pivot, all of my animations relative to the pivot point are working perfectly, which is exactly what we want. Another reason why you would want to do this in particular is if you're making characters. So let's go in, and I have a quick character setup here where I have a large oval for an upper arm, a smaller oval for a lower arm, and a tiny oval for a hand. And let me unlock these layers, and let me lock that one so I don't go in there. And what you normally would want to do is you would want to first have these arranged by hierarchy. So when you move the upper arm, the lower and the hand move together, but also you would want to be able to pivot the hand around the wrist and the lower arm around the elbow, which is of the upper arm. And if we go in here and I select each of these, so let me select upper arm and do that and do a transform, you can see the rotation of the upper arm is not in the shoulder. It's out here in the center. All right, so if I tried to do a transform, it's going to rotate around the center, which is exactly what we don't want. I go to the lower arm, same thing. It's rotating around out here at the center of the drawing, which is what we don't want. Go to the hand, same thing. So what we need to do is go to the upper arm, go in, get my tool, and my center of rotation in my upper arm would be around the shoulder, correct? And so then that works. Let's go to the lower arm, and I can take that, put the center of the rotation around the elbow, and let's go to the hand, put the center of the rotation right at the wrist. So now, if I went up and I wanted to do an animation of the upper arm, that's rotating where I expect it to be. And again, if we go to the lower arm, that's rotating where I would expect it to be. And if we go to the hand, that's rotating where I would expect it to be. So then the last thing we would need to do is just go in and parent these correctly. So if I took the lower arm and I parented it to the upper arm, and take the hand and parent that to the lower arm, now if I went in and did an animation on my upper arm, I take everything with me. And I can take my lower arm and I can rotate that, and then I can take my hand and rotate that. So you can see how setting the pivot point is really important, and to set that pivot point you must use the advanced animation tools, and you also need to make sure you set the pivot points on your objects before you set and do any animation and create any keys used in your whole scene. So hopefully that clears things up. This has been Phil with Phil Effects. Thanks a lot. Have yourself a great day.